this economic growth is the rapidly expanding world population, expected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050 from currently 8 billion. And most of this growth, ladies and gentlemen, will be in developing countries, non-OECD, including, of course, in Africa here. Number 4, urbanization globally will continue to intensify. Over the next 6 years only, to 2030, over 500 million, nearly 600 million people are expected to move into new cities all around the world, including here in Africa. This urbanization drive will require the addition, and this is just to put this number into context, of approximately 105 cities around the world the size of Cape Town. Now let's just imagine what 105 cities the size of Cape Town, where we are here today, what that means in terms of energy requirements. By 2050, ladies and gentlemen, more than 6.6 billion people around the world will be living in cities. These trends only make one thing crystal clear, to those who like to believe it and to those who don't like to believe it. It will be clear that the world is going to be needing all forms of energy, and I want to underline the word all. All forms of energy will be required, ladies and gentlemen. It's not one or the other, it's all. Oil and gas, of course, are set to remain the predominant fuels in the energy mix, retaining a share of nearly 55% of the global energy mix still by 2050, with oil retaining close to 30% and gas around 24% of the global energy mix. Now, of course, to ensure the security of supply and stability of these supplies to fuel this demand, our industries will need to invest and will need to boost investment levels significantly in the years to come. According to the research we have done at OPEC, cumulative oil-related investment requirements from now to 2050 only for the oil industry will amount to $17.4 trillion US. That's almost 640 billion per year from now to 2050. Of course, the bulk of this will be in the upstream industry, where total investment needs are around $14.2 trillion, while downstream and midstream are estimated to require 1.9 trillion and 1.3 trillion respectively. And I'm really pleased to see this important issue being integrated into this theme of this year's Africa Energy Week. Invest in African energies, energy growth through an enabling environment. What an appropriate theme. Securing this vital funding is essential to maintaining security of supply and, more importantly, to avoid the unwanted volatility in global energy prices. For Africa, in the ground, the future looks bright. It has an estimated 120 billion barrels of proven reserves of oil and around 18 trillion standard cubic feet proven reserves of natural gas. It's vital that African countries can develop these resources with access to necessary funding and technology and financing, of course. This will be vital for the economic and social development of these nations in Africa and their peoples. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, in 5 days, COP29 will get underway in Baku, Azerbaijan. OPEC and its member countries, the majority of which, 6 of which are in Africa, will be at Baku to help promote fair and balanced climate and energy outcomes. Our goal is clear. We want to ensure the voices of all our member countries are well heard, and that the unique circumstances of developing nations are taken well into consideration and well respected. The fact is, as you all know, that still today billions of people around the world are playing energy catch-up. They don't have access to the modern energy services that many of us have. For these people, many of whom call African continent home, talk about achieving net zero is neither a priority nor a reality. They are focused on simpler things, like simply attaining basic energy requirements like access to electricity and access to clean cooking solutions. They want to light their homes. They want to figure out how to be able to move freely and be transported easily around from place to place. Thus, on the energy of poverty issue, ladies and gentlemen, we really at OPEC always continue to urge world leaders to unite, to advocate for necessary support and resources to make the difference in addressing this important issue. At COP29, OPEC and its member countries will be actively engaged to advocate for a balanced and fair process, particularly with regard to climate finance and technology, and one which continues to take into account the important principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. This is crucial for Africa to ensure that any future energy pathways meet the unique needs of its citizens. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished friends and colleagues, looking ahead, I'd like to emphasize that OPEC will continue to prioritize dialogue and cooperation with all its energy partners, of course, including our partners here in Africa. In this regard, we look forward to today's OPEC Africa Roundtable later on. This will take place after a video presentation of the World Oil Outlook. The Roundtable will allow us to delve deeper into some of the key energy opportunities and challenges that Africa particularly is facing, but also globally. I look forward to engaging discussions with our friends, our colleagues, the ministers from the OPEC member countries, and I hope you'll all be staying around to enjoy that discussion. With that, I'd like to thank you all again for listening to me, to my colleagues, and I wish you all a very successful Africa Energy Week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. That was an enlightening speech. While we get ready for our next session, which will be moderated by Mr. NJ Ayuk, we would like you to watch the video once again. It was playing this morning with OPEC and Africa. Just in case you missed it, here's the video.
of this organization, it is indeed an African organization, a history of organization that its foundation came from the African continent, right in discussions from Egypt, around Algiers, and has extended through Nigeria to the River Congo. Your Excellency, Secretary General, it is indeed an honor to welcome you again to a city that you call home, but most importantly to a continent that you call home, not just Cape Town, but Africa. Monsieur le Président de la conférence de OPEC, Son Excellence Marcel, aujourd'hui je peux attendre pour parler un peu français, pour ça je dis bienvenue, et notre continent est très content que vous êtes maintenant la personne qui dirige tout notre processus avec l'OPEC. Your Excellency, Senator Lokpobiri, it is an honor to have you at your first African Energy Week, but most importantly, leading discussions today. I would be honored if you, the Secretary General and the President of the conference, would please come to the panel for a discussion. Monsieur le Président.
And of course, that is a live feed from the Africa Energy Week happening in South Africa all through this week. But we're going to quickly move over to the United States, where it seems the president-elect, for the second time, the President Donald Trump, is addressing the American people. So let's quickly also share that with you from the United States this morning.
But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. And in addition to having won the battleground states of North Carolina, I love these places, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, we are now winning in Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Alaska, which would result in us carrying at least 315 electoral votes, but it's much easier doing what the networks did or whoever called it, because there was no other path. There was no other path to victory. We also have won the popular vote. That was great. I was proud of that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And, winning the popular vote was very nice, I will tell you. It's a great feeling of love. We have a great feeling of love in this very large room with unbelievable people standing by my side. These people have been incredible. They've made the journey.
There you have it there, the Republican nominee, and of course, for former President Donald Trump, likely next president of the United States, 47th president of the United States. They're addressing the American people. We're going to go back now to South Africa to continue to bring you live feed from the Africa Energy Week as it continues this morning. Stay with us.
We have today 6 member countries, half of our organization, half of our members are African countries. We have had so many African civil servants, whether be it their ministers or be it secretaries general, who have represented OPEC in the best way over its history, throughout its history. The latest being my dear brother, Mohammed Barkindu, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And I have personally had the honor to be welcomed in all our member countries since I took office in August 2022. In fact, the first country I visited as an official visit was Equatorial Guinea. And my brother, Minister Gabriel, at that time Minister of Petroleum in Equatorial Guinea, welcomed me. I really felt home. He took me to see His Excellency the President, His Excellency the Prime Minister, various ministers, and everybody was asking, why are you going to Equatorial Guinea first? Why don't you go to your own country, Kuwait or Saudi Arabia or Iran? I said, you know why? Because I have to go and visit my boss first. And yes, Equatorial Guinea in that year was the president of the OPEC conference. And you know what? Equatorial Guinea, with all due respect, if you allow me, Your Excellency, to say, is the smallest producer amongst our member countries. Yet, because of the beauty of the way OPEC operates, the smallest producer can also become the president of the OPEC group. And that was Equatorial Guinea in 2022, it was Congo in 2023, and this year, 2024, it is Gabon. This is how OPEC operates, where no big producer can take over the role of a small producer, and no small producer can take the role of a big producer. We all operate on equal footing and equal basis, and that's why every country has an equal voice when decisions are made, be it at the Board of Governors, be it in the Economic Commission Board, or be it at the highest level, which is the Ministerial Conference. So this year, His Excellency, the Minister of Gabon, is the President of OPEC, being the ministerial body, the highest body in OPEC. The Board of Governors, we had the Governor of Nigeria, still he is the Chairman of the Board of the years, but still currently. We have with us here Dr. Gwandu from Nigeria. He's the PR coordinator. Come closer, Dr. Gwandu. Let everyone see you. There's Dr. Gwandu. We have Irene Altiobio. Please stand up, Irene. Irene runs the Energy Studies Department. We have also Suraj Matori. Where is Suraj? Suraj is here. He's also working in the public relations team. And many, many others from Algeria, from Equatorial Guinea, from Gabon, who all serve proudly in OPEC, and we are proud to have them as valuable members of the organization. This is to give you a flavor, to add to the flavor of the peanut butter and jelly, and I didn't have breakfast, now you're making me feel hungry, so you owe me peanut butter and jelly after this. But in simplistic terms, all decisions in OPEC are made by consensus. Has to be a full consensus. His Excellency Senator Lokpobiri can testify to this, the President as well. And when members sit and discuss, everybody talks very transparently and very openly, and we discuss market conditions. If a decision is related to market, then the decision is taken by consensus. At the Board of Governors as well, majority decisions are required, whether it's for appointment of staff, whether it's approval of budget. So in every aspect of how the organization is run, decisions are always discussed openly, transparently, and everybody has a say.
Thank you, Excellency. Minister Bake, we've seen OPEC have a very strong history with your country, Gabon. The Secretary General was recently in Gabon. How do you, as the President of the conference, continue to keep this organization together and also deal with Gabon's ability to work with other members but also produce the energy it needs for Gabon and for the world, and how is that relationship with OPEC working?
Bon, je vous remercie. Le Gabon est membre de l'OPEP depuis de nombreuses années, depuis longtemps. On était sortis et on est revenu. Depuis 1 an, je suis président de la conférence des ministres. Il y a un intérêt pour les pays producteurs africains à être membres de l'OPEP. Parce que, surtout pour les petits producteurs, je pense que au sein de l'OPEP, on arrive à trouver une certaine force, on est solidaire. L'OPEP s'est fait pour stabiliser le marché. C'est grâce à l'OPEP qu'on arrive à stabiliser le marché, l'OPEP et l'OPEP+, bien sûr. On arrive à stabiliser le marché et un petit producteur africain aura du mal à pouvoir opérer dans ce monde qui est vraiment difficile. Donc, on a tout fait pour garder le Gabon au sein de l'OPEP et on souhaite que tous les autres pays africains qui sont membres de l'OPEP puissent y demeurer. On a tous des spécificités, chaque pays a ses problèmes. Je crois qu'au niveau de l'OPEP, on tient compte de ça. Comme a dit le secrétaire général tout à l'heure, nous sommes, les décisions se prennent d'une manière collégiale. Il y a, comment on appelle ça, il y a une déclaration d'engagement pour respecter les décisions qui sont prises au sein de l'OPEP. Donc c'est à travers ça qu'on fait tout pour garder cette solidarité de l'OPEP qui reste vraiment un organisme qui stabilise réellement les marchés. C'est vraiment le gros intérêt qu'on trouve au sein de l'OPEP. Et pour nous, on pense que nous sommes très contents d'être membres de cette organisation. On y trouve intérêt et je crois que c'est ce que je souhaiterais pour tous les pays africains qui sont encore membres et ceux qui ne sont pas encore membres, ils devraient trouver aussi un certain intérêt à rejoindre l'OPEP. Voilà.
Thank you. Senator Heineken, there has always been discussions around African states meeting their OPEC quotas and also being able to produce hydrocarbons without restrictions. Nigeria as a country has always been a leading African producer. Does membership with OPEC hinder your production or gives you a chance to continue collaborating with others when it comes to producing hydrocarbons in your country?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me first of all start by saying that Nigeria is one of the oldest members of OPEC from Africa. And OPEC is very strategic in the global energy landscape. Our membership of OPEC and the quota given to Nigeria or any country at all doesn't hinder you, from producing. If for any reason you grow some excess capacity and you overproduce at the OPEC level, OPEC will engage you, to say, look, you're overproducing. These are the likely implications of your overproduction. And so at no time has any country been hindered, from, meeting its quota or by any circumstance, overproducing. I've been in OPEC, for the past, 1 year plus. I've had occasion to be part of ministerial meetings where countries have overproduced, And OPEC is engaging them to say, look, stay within your quota. And the reason is not just your capacity to be able to produce, but also price stability and sustainability of supply chain. It's very important. There is this saying in Africa that, look, if you want to go, fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you better go together. And that is why, I want to subscribe to the opinion of the president of OPEC, with minister from Gabon, that there's a lot of wisdom in belonging to OPEC. They provide strategic support to you. You see a lot of black people, Nigerians, who have been in OPEC. In fact, Nigeria has been blessed, to have a lot of people who are working in OPEC, including His Excellency Secretary General Wapo. He was Nigeria's OPEC governor. He worked in OPEC. He was OPEC governor to Nigeria at some point in time. I'm very sure that he was well molded to do the work he's doing as Secretary General of Wapo because of the experience he got from OPEC. And he's bringing the experience he got there to bear. And we are benefiting from it. So to answer your question, no inhibition at all. At any point in time when there's excess capacity that you are able to, overproduce, OPEC will only engage you and see how you can remedy it. There's no inhibition at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Excellency Secretary General, I would like to come back to you. I think your opening remarks plus the first question. But there is always issues around the market that comes with whether it is about watching a supply glut or looking at data. I want to focus more on data. How do you use data to really encourage or enforce your decision making, whether from secondary sources or other sources? Can you take us through that process?
That's a brilliant question. But before I delve into that, I think based on what Their Excellencies just mentioned, I think it's important to, since we're here, to mention that I think if you look at history, OPEC is probably the best example of an organization that defends the interests of developing countries. Whether it's OPEC itself or through our sister agency developed in 1976, the OPEC Fund for International Development. The OPEC Fund for International Development, ladies and gentlemen, is our sister organization, also based in Vienna, that does social...
Are you ducking the question?
Sorry?
Are you ducking the question? You with two politicians.
No, I'm not.
You appear to be a better politician than them.
No, I'm not dodging the question. I'm still waiting for the peanut butter and jelly. That's what it is. But the OPEC Fund is another example of how OPEC plays a role in developing societies, economies, development of developing countries around the world. And you know what the beauty is of the OPEC Fund? It's the only financial institution around the world where it is not allowed to invest in its own member countries. The OPEC Fund is only allowed to invest in other countries that are non-members. So that's one. Number two, I think is important that we emphasize on a critical general theme, which His Excellency Senator Heineken mentioned. Stability of the market, as well as His Excellency the President. This is what OPEC is all about. We want stable energy prices because we want to go far, not quick, as His Excellency mentioned. OPEC does this the best. OPEC makes sure there's always stability in the market. And you know what? Most of the people around here probably are from IOCs or companies that operate in the industry. Let me say it very clearly. What we do at OPEC, our member countries, is provide stability, which is an enabling platform for you to be able to operate, whether it's in Africa or any place around the world, offshore, onshore. Without that stability that OPEC and OPEC Plus continue to provide, investments would be impossible. We have had two examples in the past. 2015-16, with the boom in shale production in the US, there was a supply glut, and OPEC stepped in with OPEC Plus and created the OPEC Plus agreement in 2017, where we brought the market back into good balance. And of course, African members of OPEC played an integral role in that process. 2020, we had COVID. Demand collapsed, there was another supply glut. OPEC Plus stepped in again to rescue the market, to be able to incentivize a platform where we have stability, to be able to get people to invest again and meet future demand. Because without these investments, the world is not going to be able to meet future demand. And these investments, ladies and gentlemen, require long lead time. It's not like turning on the tap of water. You have to decide today, get the approvals, get the investments, and then production comes on many years further down the road. So what we do at OPEC is we try to keep, through our research team, NJ, to answer your question very clearly, we have a clear radar laser focus on global economy, on global indicators for things that cause, all the matters that cause a rise in demand. Like I said, population growth, for example. We cannot deny that the world's population is going to grow. It's going to be in Africa, Middle East, Latin America, South America, the developing parts of the world. Yes, this will be countered by a stability or a decline in population probably in other parts of the world. Consumption patterns as well feed into our modeling. We have very robust models at OPEC that the research team runs. Irina works on that team in the Energy Studies Department, where they feed all that data into our internal modeling. And you know what the beauty of OPEC is? We do our work, our number crunching, without ideology behind it. Unlike others who feed numbers and feed out reports to the people, to the general public, based on ideologically driven parameters, OPEC is all about numbers and hard data. We look at population, we look at economic growth, trade, all of that, urbanization, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. All of that leads us to one direction only, and one direction that, by the way, OPEC is not the outlier. We have many global companies and research institutes all supporting that same view, that with all these trends, the world is going to require much more energy. In fact, the only issue that we're seeing now is that people are just beginning to realize that OPEC's views on long-term energy demand growth are the more realistic ones. We see the companies like the likes of Wood Mackenzie now issuing what they call a delayed energy transition scenario, basically raising the number for demand and pushing out the so-called peak oil demand further down the horizon. And we think this is a trend that will continue to evolve. For us, as I said, we see oil demand hitting 120 million barrels a day by 2050 versus what it is today, or last year 102. This year we expect it to reach 105 in the fourth quarter, averaging around 104 million barrels a day for the whole year 2024. So we do still see robust growth in demand based on all the growth we see in India, China, Africa, many places around the world. And this is done through a very detailed mechanism using our internal modeling and our forecasting capabilities. And we've been doing this for 64 years since OPEC has been created.
Thank you, Excellency. Senator Heineken, I would like to switch this discussion a little bit. We're getting COP coming up in Baku. OPEC members are going to be hard-pressed when it comes to the issue of energy transition. And OPEC members are being seen sometimes as the culprit of the climate crisis. How are you and other OPEC members going to shape the dialogue in Baku, especially taking into consideration Nigerian and African priorities, while having those discussions that shape policies coming out of Baku that could affect, one, in any way, how we deal with the oil industry in Africa?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me take us back to what transpired in UAE last year. You know, last year, I think, experienced the most aggressive campaign against production of fossil fuel. And at the end of the day, at the end of the COP28 in UAE, there was almost a resolution to say, let us finally stop production of fossil fuel. But OPEC stood very firm, and together we're able to, to change the narrative. I remember that, we're together, OPEC members and non-OPEC members, had to collaborate to see how we can, stop that. And our contention is that, look, the world is in need of energy. Historically, no sort of energy has been completely abandoned. So fossil fuel, oil and gas cannot be the first one. That is one. And for, countries like Africa, we are victims and not culprits. We cannot be made, to look like we're the culprits. If the total African emission is estimated to be about 3%, it would be absolutely, ridiculous for you to say that we should remain in poverty, we should remain in energy poverty, we should remain in the kind of low industrialization that we are.
But Minister, there's a chance for you to be able to get out of energy poverty with solar and wind.
Yeah, but for you to get to that point, you need to get the money to be able to finance the energy mix. What is in abundance in Africa is oil and gas. We also have solar, wind, hydro, all sorts of energy are possible in Nigeria, in Africa. But those energy sources, as that today, have limited investment. What, today has substantial investment in Africa because of the long period of production of oil and gas is hydrocarbon. And our own, ambition is to see how we can raise the funding required to finance our energy mix from the process of, production of fossil fuel. And so it will be wrong in our opinion, even when we go to COP29, my own, contention is that we will continue to say, look, we're not against energy transition. That is why even in the African continent, steps have been taken to see how production of oil and gas will be done in a cleaner, greener, and more sustainable way. In Nigeria, we have Pretoria of policies, Pretoria of laws. The PIA, in fact, prescribes clear governance structure on how oil and gas should be explored, taking into consideration the philosophy of, this energy transition. But Africa, should be allowed to go at its own pace. Because today, our problem is not energy transition. What are we transiting from? We have no energy. So first of all, let's explore the oil and gas resources we have, raise the funding needed to be able to finance the solar, the wind, the hydro, and then the other sources of energy, so that we can catch up with the rest of the world. Yesterday there was an interesting dimension, when the Andy from Cosmos Energy said, look, the rest of the world, in Nigerian parlance, wanted to do us 409. In Nigeria, 409 is like somebody trying to trick you. No country in the world is slowing down in production. One of the, strongest climate envoys, is from the US. I don't want to mention his name. I can even mention him, John Kerry. He's one of the strongest, climate envoys. But US today is the highest producer of oil and gas. Charity begins at home. In Europe, they are also ramping up production. Last year, UK gave over 100 licenses for new exploration in the North Sea. Norway is ramping up production. Nobody from Europe, nobody in America has been able to stop production of oil and gas. But they want us to stop so that we can continue to depend on promises that will never be made.
And that right there is Heineken Lokpobiri, the Minister of State for Petroleum, participating in the Africa Energy Week. We will reconnect with them to continue the conversations that are being had, but we will be wrapping up here on Breakfast Central. Thank you for joining us. I am Olive Embodi, and I'll see you tomorrow. And I am Osaogi Ogbon. I'll see you tomorrow as we, of course, continue to bring you the biggest conversations happening here in Nigeria and across the world. See you tomorrow.
The reason that funding comes with collaboration with other OPEC member states, or just purely focused with international companies?
No, we are doing whatever we are doing in collaboration with OPEC member countries, and then OPEC Plus. Because of the importance of this matter, we've now forged an alliance with countries that are not members of OPEC, but they belong to another bloc called the OPEC Plus. These days when we meet, we have my colleague here, the president of OPEC, will speak, the leader of OPEC Plus will speak, Because we have to, come together because this thing affects our common, interest.
But go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
So if I, excuse me, I want to add to what His Excellency just mentioned, that a very important point, and I mentioned in my remarks, is that our position is that climate negotiations have to take into account the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. This is enshrined in the Paris Agreement. It's very simple. And let me explain a little bit more. When we talk about historical emissions, this is key. Historical emissions of CO2 globally since the start of the Industrial Revolution, 1850, it's the G7 countries that were responsible for almost 45% of global CO2 emissions. It's not Africa. It's not OPEC either. OPEC has 12 member countries who are responsible for only 4.6% over the same time frame. And to put this into context, 12 member countries of OPEC, 4.6%. Remember this figure, please. Compare this to one country in the G7 or Europe, the United Kingdom, 4.6%. Sorry, OPEC is 4%. So 12 member countries of OPEC emitted 4%, while one country, the UK, emitted 4.6% over that time frame. So this is very important as we head into COP to keep that when our countries go, as His Excellency mentioned. We have a common positions developed through our coordination meetings that we do at the OPEC Secretariat, not only within our member countries, but also with our partners at OPEC+. And His Excellency mentioned COP28. Yes, COP28 came out with a consensus on transitioning away, but people focus only on the word transitioning away. They don't look at the rest of the statement that was agreed, which is the meat, as they say. It's not, you don't have to just take the skin off, which is transitioning away, but the meat, the actual material says you have to respect capabilities of countries. There is technology, tripling energy efficiency. So every country has its own pathway to achieve its transition goals and to meet its climate goals. So His Excellency mentioned, yes, Africa has vast resources that are required to be developed. But also when we talk about financing to deal with climate change issues, people have to invest more in technologies. Some of our member countries are well ahead in advanced stages of investing in CCUS, in direct air capture. We need to bring more of that investment into Africa in order to enable African producers to be able to produce more and getting rid of the emissions. The one important thing is I want to really emphasize on is when we talk about climate negotiations, remember that the Paris Agreement is about reducing emissions. It's not about choosing a source of fuel over another source, and it's not about leaving it under the ground as some are calling for. So with that, I think it's very important to recenter the discussions in this COP or the coming COP, which will be in Brazil next year, on the key objectives of the Paris Agreement, reduction of emissions. The problem we have is emissions. It's not oil, it's not gas. In fact, I wrote an article about this 2 days ago, which I would urge you, if you have time, to go to the OPEC website and see that all sectors globally in the industries, and all sectors have a role to play in dealing with emissions. The focus is always on oil and gas, as if we are the culprits, as Senator Heineken said. We are not the culprits, no. We are part of the solution. We need to be there at the COP discussions. We need to enable our countries to be able to develop these resources for socio-economic development, but also cognizant of the fact that we have to find solutions to deal with climate issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Excellency Minister Bake, we have an OPEC conference that can sometimes be fractured. As the President, how have you been able to manage OPEC and OPEC Plus relationships so that decisions are made? And the second part as well is, how have you been able to ensure that Gabon continues to advance its energy issues, energy dialogues, while as OPEC, the President of the conference?
Je voudrais d'abord revenir un peu rapidement sur ce qui a été dit tout à l'heure. Moi, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec ce que mon collègue a dit, avec ce que le secrétaire général a dit tout à l'heure. Nous ne sommes pas les seuls pollueurs. Nous ne sommes pas les seuls pollueurs. Ce sont les industries qui sont les véritables pollueurs. Nous, ces industries ont fonctionné pendant longtemps avec le pétrole et le gaz. Et maintenant, on commence à vouloir nous imposer la transition énergétique. Il faut qu'on prenne aussi, qu'on nous laisse aussi le temps de nous adapter et puis de faire des mix. Il ne s'agit pas nécessairement de dire on va passer de l'un à l'autre comme ça d'une manière aussi brutale. Il faut qu'il y ait un mix et puis on doit aller de manière progressive. Pour revenir à votre question, je disais tout à l'heure que les décisions se prennent de manière collégiale au niveau de l'OPEP. Le président de l'OPEP, c'est un modérateur. C'est un modérateur un peu comme vous. Donc je crois que nous avons un certain nombre de... Il y a des études qui sont faites par le secrétariat général, qui sont présentées, qui sont communiquées à tout le monde, à tous les membres. Et puis, comme j'ai dit aussi tout à l'heure, pour ce qui concerne le président, les décisions sont même faciles à prendre, dans la mesure où les études sont claires. Le rôle de l'OPEP, c'est de stabiliser la situation. Je ne sais pas si on peut s'imaginer un seul instant.